looks like it's officially noon. I guess I could ding the bell if I had it, but welcome everybody to August 20th Rotary meeting for Newport Rotary. August 20th is the 232nd day of 2020, which means we're about 2/3 of the way finished with the year. So just 133 more days to endure until 2021. It's encouraging. So let's see, anybody volunteer for the pledge or a song? I think songs might be a little difficult on Zoom to get in sync, but how about the pledge? Richard, would you?
I'm happy.
Oh, Diane, okay.
Well, I've got my flag up if you can see it. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation,
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, thanks, Diane. You and Keith sure have the great props for the pledge. Thanks for that. So do we have any guests here today? I see we have our program, our speaker we'll get to a little bit later, but anybody else have a guest to announce? No?
Hi, this is Ursula. So Michelle Goodrick is here from the Corvallis Club. So she's a visiting Rotarian. Hi, Michelle.
Hi, Michelle. Welcome. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So how are you holding meetings in Corvallis? Similar method to this?
Yes, exactly. We're doing Zoom meetings and continuing. It sounds like much in the same way you guys are.
Well, good. Welcome.
Thank you.
Too bad we don't have better food to share with you today, but we'll work on that. We'll get back there sooner or later.
Right, we'll get there.
Yeah. So August 20th, this day in history. On this day in 1920, the first commercial radio station begins operating in Detroit, Michigan under the call sign 8MK. It's now owned and run by CBS as WWJ News Radio 950. 1988, in the worst day of fires in Yellowstone National Park, firestorms destroy over 150,000 acres of the park. This was the worst day of fire destruction in the park, which saw a summer where over 1/3 of the park was destroyed. Unfortunately, it sounds like California is dealing with something similar now, so hopefully they get a handle on those fires here quickly. 1996, USA minimum hourly wage is raised to $5.15 an hour, which was an increase of 90 cents. So we've come a little way since then. And I thought it was the biggest announcement for this week in history came a couple days ago on August 18th, which marked the 100th anniversary of women's suffrage. August 18, 1920, the 19th Amendment was ratified, which gave all women in the US the right to vote. So that was definitely a big day too, yeah. So good news on that front for sure. A couple announcements. We had a survey that went out to everyone. I think we got about 43 responses, and this was about meeting in person, maybe starting October. And it looks like we had about 1/3 that said they probably would attend. We had the majority that said no, and I think the reasons were all kind of consistent. Waiting on a vaccine, waiting for counts in the county to go down, so forth. But we're working on getting some more information on how Best Western might, what their protocol might be for keeping us safe and distanced and all that good stuff. And Doretta is going to share a little bit more on that. So go ahead, Doretta.
John, will you put up that slide I sent you?
Sure.
Or PDF or whatever.
Yep.
So first of all, the board would like to thank everybody for participating in the survey. It's been nice to have your input. Little confusion on based on some of the comments that were made. So just kind of wanted to go over something that Best Western sent us last week. As you can see, from the PDF that John put up. On July 24th, the governor defined a gathering as a means of a group of individuals meeting for a common purpose, including faith-based, civic, cultural, and other purposes indoors and outdoors. Whereas an indoor social get-together means a group of common social or recreational purposes. So we fall in the category of gathering. And as you can see, if John scrolls down, no matter what phase we're in for gathering, we're allowed to have 50 people indoors. So Best Western has asked us if we intend to fulfill our current contract with them, or if we want to renegotiate the contract. And so that's why we were looking to you folks to give us some feedback on how we proceed with Best Western and whether we open up for in-person meetings starting October 1st. I think, Freddie, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the board was intending to continue with hybrid meetings, meaning we would still make Zoom available for those who don't feel comfortable with indoor meetings. But at this point, we're just trying to give some feedback to Best Western on whether we move forward with them or not. It would be a plated lunch. They would do the rules are that they can't have buffet. So we would have a server. They would maintain social distancing. They've demonstrated to a bunch of us that they're able to do that with their setup. So that's kind of where we are. Just wanted to kind of bring everybody up to speed on the new rules. Anybody have any questions on that?
So Doretta, would they get rid of their guaranteed minimum then?
Yes, they would do away with the guaranteed minimum, at least for the time being. They just need to know at this point whether they need to reserve a room for us, whether they need to staff to feed us, et cetera, et cetera. So that's why they're asking us if we want to go back in and renegotiate the contract, or if we want to just.
So when you guys say 43 people answered the survey and a third said they'd meet in person, that's roughly like 14 people would attend?
Yeah, I think it was 13 actually, but yeah.
Yeah, 13 yeses, 7 maybes, which is 20, and 19 no's. So it's about a 50-50 split.
Why? My fear is if we don't honor some being part of the contract, they're going to give up our spot. And when this is all over, where are we going to go?
Yeah, I think like Doretta mentioned that there was enough no answers where we would definitely do a hybrid meeting for people that don't feel comfortable to catch it on Zoom either way. And I think we're going to have to do that for quite a while, even when maybe 2/3 of the people feel comfortable going back to in-person meetings, we'll probably still have to have this Zoom component. So I think if they waive the minimum charges, there's not a lot of downside to having small groups. And again, this is starting October, so it's not for 5 or 6 weeks yet. So yeah, I think
hybrid for a while anyway, because sometimes if you get stuck at work and you all of a sudden you're 10 minutes late to Rotary, if you're able to hop on and catch the meeting and the speaker, and then it gets counted as a meeting too, then you don't have so many absences. So I kind of like the idea of having a hybrid meeting and having a Zoom component.
Well, yeah, I think we need to stay with that as well, whether we go back to the Best Western or not. My fear was if we tell them, no, we're not coming back at all, and we're just sticking with Zoom, when we want to come back, they might not be able to take us.
We won't have
there is one more aspect to it that I failed to mention, and that is while they wouldn't have a minimum, they do have an RSVP requirement. And so we would have to, by noon on Monday, RSVP for Thursday, and then we would be liable for whatever number that is. And so the board's going to have to figure out a way to manage those RSVPs, et cetera, et cetera. We've had a couple of ideas on that, but I think before we started going down that path, we just wanted to get everybody's input on whether we should even be discussing it.
Yeah, I think we got some good feedback. So thanks to everyone that that voiced an opinion. And I agree with Kathy. I think the Zoom component is great for just convenience for people who can't be there in person anyway to make a meeting. So I'm sure we'll keep Zooming for time to come. So thanks, Doretta. Any other announcements before we move into our Sergeant of Arms? All right, Bob, you got anything for us?
Oh, I got a little bit of stuff, not a bunch, but yeah, I'd like to say hello to everybody. And Chief Malloy, nice to see you. The strangest thing happened, and it reminded how everybody remembers Carrie Lewis. And when she was a member, there was kind of like between her and I a Carrie Lewis rule. And I would fine her and she would pay an amount of money, but did not want to talk about what the fine was about. The Carrie Lewis rule. And I think that's a good rule because sometimes there's people that just want to pay the fine and forget about everything else. And I don't know, let's just try it. Has anyone got something that they feel a little bit guilty about? It probably should come out in the open, but you just don't want to talk about it and you just want to pay a fine. Has anybody got anything like that?
Hey, Bob, it's Marcia Buckley here.
Oh, hi, Marcia. How are you?
Well, I'm fine. And yourself?
Oh, gosh, I feel like I just feel fine. I'm really happy to see you. Have you got a little something you want to talk about?
I'd like to pay $100 fine.
$100 fine?
$100 fine.
Oh, my.
I have some events coming up in the next few months, and I think I don't want to bring them up at Rotary, but I think inevitably somehow that they might pop up, and I just don't want anyone to be offended by that, and I'm going to do my best to keep my stuff out of Rotary, but $100 fine, I'm just going to do it in advance now for anything that has or may happen, and I'm doing my best to make sure it doesn't.
Boy, there is a stand-up person. There is a real stand-up person. I am so proud of you. Well, we aren't going to ask any questions. What do you think?
Mm-hmm. That's best.
Oh, this is easy. I mean, this is so much fun. Kathy, did you ever find your crooks? Oh, you're feeding your face. I'm sorry.
Lunchtime. I honestly believe that our illustrious police force know who they are. I think they've got a pretty good video of them. I think they might, I'm hoping they're trying to build a case against them and we'll catch them. But at this point, no, I haven't heard any more.
Oh, I see. Well, we will keep our fingers crossed.
Jason could probably add to that, but that's what I know at this point. In the meantime, I've got my windows fixed and I bought some new inventory to fill that case and we're back up and running. So there you go. Just another
really
day
good.
in the life of a jeweler.
Well, there's also another life that you talked a little bit about that just really has my curiosity. This cat.
Oh, my
Dave's
cat.
Tell us a little bit about that because not everyone was listening. Kathy, we're waiting.
My cat is a killer.
Oh.
We rescued him from the Fred Meyer Garden Department about 1.5 years ago. He was hanging around there and we went down and got him. And he promptly got turned into the police by one of my neighbors because apparently he wouldn't get out of her house. But what he neglected to tell the animal control officer was that she had wanted to adopt him and she'd been feeding him in her house and he never misses a meal all over the neighborhood. So, but then she couldn't get him out of her house. So she called the police on him and of course, I got a little visit from animal control.
Oh my.
So my good friend Patty Riley down at the police station called and asked if they could get a mugshot of Freddie, because all of a sudden with her new job, she was dealing with drug addicts and thieves and the heater cat. And she wasn't quite sure, you know, what her job entailed, but apparently it involves my cat. So his mugshot is hanging down at Police Central. Freddie,
Yep.
have you seen his cat? So
We can make a deal on this.
he also hangs out at the Wendell house down, but apparently he just got kicked out of there too. So listen, it's not my cat, it's Dave's cat.
It's Dave's cat.
It's Dave's cat. Absolutely Dave's cat.
Where is Dave?
Dave is working. They opened, I'm sure Dave would be happy to pay a fine, but they finally got to open Ripley's. And they have been absolutely slammed down there. And if you haven't been, you should go see the new Ripley's.
Now
And
you're changing everything on me now. And you're
Sorry.
working it good.
Good.
But I'm going to go back to the original point.
My cat?
Your cat. We've got to pay something for that cat.
I will add to the cat because he also comes into my yard. Only Stephen Bunny's cat chases him out. So he's not really all that scary.
He's,
Oh, well,
Stephen
maybe
Bunny's
this is a
cat's more
neighborhood thing, and
scary.
maybe we ought to charge everyone in the neighborhood.
quite a cat, I will tell you. And he's
Tom
quite,
Baker lives over here. I'm sure he has a story too.
he's quite a killer. So it's all
Kathy,
it's
make an
based-
offer on the cat. How much? What's cat worth? I mean, what?
I will pay $10 for Freddie. I usually use an adjective before Freddie, but I'm just going to say I'll pay $10 for Freddie.
Say, wait a minute, where'd that name come from? Geez.
What do you think we ought to charge Wendell on this?
That's Freddie from Fred Meyer.
Yeah. What do you think we ought to charge Wendell?
Well,
I need to clarify that I said that Queen sent Freddie on his way, and I'm certainly not the king of that household. I'm just merely a knave in it. The two cats that are in our house are the junior royalties, so I don't think I have to pay anything. Because
I mean, $2. $2.
I'll give you $10.
Okay.
Give it to food. Give it to food
Peter
share.
Cat. I'm sorry, Jim. I'm sorry.
Now we got
It just
one
gets
last
deeper
one.
and deeper.
We got one last one. Is Mark Hannaran? Is he on there? Mark Hannaran? Has anyone seen Mark?
I see him. I can see him. He's there.
I'm here, Bob.
Oh, hi, Mark. How are you
Bob.
doing?
Good. You?
Yeah, I'm doing great.
Awesome.
Great. I understand that Julie scolded poor Howard.
Julie.
What is a Julie scolding like?
Oh, I don't think I was there to witness it. I think I was outside the house, so I don't know what exactly transpired, to be honest with you, Bob.
He's asking what a scolding from you.
Oh, a scolding.
Very nice.
I usually try and cover the bruises, Bob.
Uh-huh. So it's pretty brutal, though.
Yeah, it can be brutal, but most of the time I deserve it, though. So.
But I mean, anytime I hear about a Rotarian being picked on, I bristle right up. What do you suppose we ought to charge Julie for scolding you and poor Howard?
Poor Howard. Oh, how about $5?
By golly, $5 it is. I think that's fair. Have we got any other happy dollars out there? Sonetta, you look happy today. What happened to you today that makes you look so happy?
You know, Bob, I was just thinking about how happy I was to see your crew paving PUD's driveway
Try
yesterday.
changing.
I was just
subjects.
thinking, that was what I was thinking about. That was the smile.
Sonetta, this isn't going to work.
It's the truth, Bob, is really what I was just thinking.
Yeah. You think I believe you? You're wrong. Now, what are you so happy about? And maybe.
Bob, I'm happy about something from last week.
Well, tell us, but don't let
So
me
on
forget Sonetta.
Monday afternoon, someone from Road and Driveway Paving knocked on our drive-up window and said that they were going to close our drive-up for 45 minutes to pave the streets. And we were like, okay, we're happy that those potholes were getting done. But it didn't get finished until Friday afternoon. And so we were closed in the drive-up for about 4 days. But so I'm happy that that got done, because better late than never. So I think that you should pay $1 for my inconvenience to my customers.
Let's just talk to Mr. Other Wienert about this. What do you think? Is he here?
I don't know.
Yes, he is.
Yeah, he's amongst the list. He probably just got to find his button.
Ah. I wonder where he is.
Used to all this heavy equipment. He probably doesn't have a lever or something to push, I suppose.
Well, I think we're going to charge him. Julie, we're going to charge him $10.
Okay.
All right, now let's get back to Sonetta, because she knows that I've forgotten about her by now, but I haven't. I wrote her name down.
I don't think you would ever forget about me, Bob, ever.
That's probably true too. Now, let's get this squared away. How much are we paying?
Oh, I thought you wanted to know what I was happy about.
Well, we're going to get to that.
You called my parking lot paving thing a fib, so.
That's right. I mean, accusing a Rotarian of not telling the truth is like kind of serious stuff.
Yeah.
How did Audekirk get into this?
It's coming to my defense.
Sonetta, let's, you don't even have to tell us why you're happy. Just tell us what you're willing to pay.
Well, I will pay $5, and I am happy that next week I will be going camping with my granddaughter for a few days. So I will unfortunately miss Rotary, but I'm very happy to spend some time with my granddaughter. So $5.
Well, that's special. That's special. Well, good. Okay, well, we finally got through that. Now, is there any other happy dollars?
So Bob,
Loretta?
$25.
Oh my.
I can't decide if it's for a fine or if it's happy, but as of tomorrow, I'll have made it another year, and I'll make it 25 because in my mind, I'm still 25.
By golly, in my mind, you look 25.
Ah, Bob, thank you.
And who's your favorite Bob?
The one downstairs.
Okay, anybody else?
Did you
Anybody
think I was
else?
going to answer that somewhere different?
Well, I mean, Bob, I'm thinking, Bob, you must be happy. I mean, aside from all the paving that's going on,
Good point.
hasn't something happened quite recently that made you happy?
I really am happy. I'm gonna say I'm $100 happy, since my kid will not speak up. And how about you, Jeff? You look happy.
Yeah, I'm happy. I'm happy. I'm going to go see my new grandson this weekend.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah, so I'm $50 happy for that.
Well, good for you. All right, good.
So Bob, I want to say that.
Hi, Ursula.
Hi, Bob. Your son did speak up. He doesn't have a mic, but he chatted that he's paying $20 to Julie's Paul Harris.
So I'm paying $100 and he's paying 20. What's wrong with this?
Maybe he'll change it. Check the chat. But I'm $25 happy that Michelle is at this meeting, because we've been trying to coordinate her to come to a meeting for a long time. So
Good. Okay, well, we did pretty good today, and I'd like to thank you all for your generosity, and I'm going to turn it back over to Freddie. Nice to see you.
All right. Well, thanks, Bob. Nicely done, as always. So today we have Chief Jason Malloy with us from Newport Police Department. And Chief Malloy has been with the Newport Police Department since December of 1994. He's worked various assignments in the patrol division to include field training officer, traffic officer, major crash team, and drug recognition expert. He was promoted through the ranks from officer to sergeant in 2004, sergeant to lieutenant in 2010, and interim chief of police in October 2016. In July 17th of 2017, he was appointed chief of police, where he's been ever since. So welcome, Jason. And Chief Malloy, I'll turn it over to you now.
Thank you, Freddie. So a little concerned where you got all that information. It's kind of like stalker behavior. I'm assuming Miranda had something to do with that.
I think it was on your city website, but whoever's responsible for that.
Perfect. So police reform, kind of a global term. We're not really looking at the fact that we're fixing something that's broken, but when you look at this at a national scale, Oregon and Newport couldn't be left out. And the fact that something needed to be done in light of recent events between Ferguson, Minneapolis, I think it all just came to a head. And the public requires and demands transparency, which we fully support. And we'll talk about what happened locally with the state of Oregon, is that there was 6 different legislative bills that went through the last emergency session. And a lot of those had a direct impact on the Newport police and things we were able to implement. Actually, even prior to them going into law, we already had some measures in place. But I'll just go through the list really quick. The disciplinary matrix, which is Senate Bill 1604, ultimately talks about frequently members of law enforcement will do something where they get in trouble, they get disciplined. And due to due process, they have the right to a hearing, they have the right to challenge it, they have the right to go to an arbitrator. And I'm sure many of you have heard about arbitrators overruling discipline, police officers getting their job back, getting back paid, whatever it may be. The disciplinary matrix takes that away and it makes the final decision by the city or the department the final decision. But to do that, we have to have a disciplinary matrix or guidelines. So it's not arbitrary, we're not making things up. It's something that we're working on at the state level through our insurance carrier, through our legal team. So we see something coming in this in the next few months. We don't have a definitive answer, except that we do have to move forward. The state did create a joint committee on transparent policing and use of force, which is definitely needed. It's members of the community, police chiefs, sheriffs. They're going to provide a lot of information based upon public input and what do we need to ensure law enforcement remains transparent and that law enforcement's doing what the public wants, not what we want. One of the big ones that, in light of the Minneapolis event, is the police chokehold ban. The Newport Police already has a ban on a chokehold. We do have certain instances where we can use a carotid hold, but we have updated our policies to eliminate those as a general use of force. They do still apply at a state, national, and in a local level when an officer is justified in using deadly force. And so ultimately what that comes down to is if our life or somebody else's life is in immediate danger and we have to make an end, is the only time we're going to use that. Other than that, we have put out countless trainings, countless memos, countless directives on when an officer can and cannot ultimately touch somebody's neck. The big one that I think we're going to see probably the most within the state and definitely in Newport is going to be the duty to intervene and report, which is another House bill. And simply stated, what that says is if an officer is doing something wrong, another officer that witnessed it is required to report it. If the officer that's witnessed it hasn't reported it, they can be disciplined, they can be held accountable, ultimately for the same actions that the officer did. And so this isn't just on physical force, this is on conduct, this is on an officer making any decision based upon any of the protected classes. So again, we've put out a lot of training bulletins on this, again, more directives and making sure all of our staff know at no point can they turn a blind eye. If one of our staff is doing something wrong, as much as you would like to see it reported, I also want to see it reported. The statewide officer suspension and revocation database is now actually up and running. That's run by the Department of Public Safety Standards and Training. That's the police academy that governs everything that we do. They're the ones that issue our certificates to make sure that we're compliant with all of our training and our certificates. And prior to the new law, these were records that were open to the public, but they did not have names attached. So if an officer did something so egregious that they lost their certification, were terminated, no longer able to be a police officer in the state of Oregon, they were listed as Officer A or Officer B. That's now listed as the actual officer's name. So there's a database where unfortunately we have some of our former members that are on there that did something so egregious they were terminated and they will never be police officers in the state of Oregon again, which is good. The final House bill is restrictions on the use of tear gas. Now again, this is something at the state level. I don't know of a time in my 28 years where I've actually seen tear gas used in person. We don't even have it here. We have access to it through another agency, but there's restrictions on it. And if you've been watching any of the news, you can see there is quite the system that has to be done, such as in Portland. They have to declare a riot. They have to warn that it's going to be happening. It doesn't just happen like it did a couple of months ago. So those are the big things at the national or at the state level that is happening. But locally, we've taken it one step further. We've had a couple demonstrations. Some are demonstrations, some are protests. I haven't quite figured out the difference yet. But a group of people coming together to voice their opinion and voice their cause. And we've heard those, we've listened to those. There was a group of 3 former Newport high school students that are, I believe, sophomores and juniors now in college that had just started asking questions, and they got our city council's attention. And so we've had a couple meetings with them where they've had a presentation, and they're talking about making sure that our underrepresented, such as our Latino community, our LGBTQ community, that they're also represented and have a voice. And again, this is fully supported. And I think I've said, since my chief's interview from day one, and even under the Mark Miranda days, is, I really think that our community has to be involved in our police department as much as our police department's involved in our community. I can assume what it is that our community wants, but that's not going to get us very far. So I think having community input is really important. How does our public want to be policed? How do they want to see our police department? There's certain things, that we really can't. I've heard discussions such as, we'd like to have all locals never receive a ticket. They can drive as fast as they want. Well, that is great if you're a local, really something that we can't do, we can't support. We can't target only tourists or something. So, but there's something else called 8 Can't Wait. And it's a national campaign that's been around for a while. And the ultimate, it is to reduce harm reduction to the community, to have transparency, to have accountability. Those are the banning of chokeholds, requiring de-escalation, which is something that we do. We have policy by, and I'll talk about our accreditation here in a little bit. And I'll use Mark Miranda's name a lot when I talk about that. But de-escalation is really important. It's like anything, probably in any one of your businesses or your lives, things evolve. And law enforcement's evolved over the last 25 years. We no longer storm in like stormtroopers, break up something, take everybody to jail and go home. Now it is, we want voluntary compliance. We want people to do things because it's the right thing to do. And now when they don't, we do have options such as arrest or using force, whatever be needed. But we also are training our officers more diligently now in de-escalation, of taking a few extra moments to talk to somebody, trying to convince them that it is the right thing to do, that it is the best thing to do to stop what they're doing. And there's a lot of studies, there's a lot of things that have shown that when officers use proper de-escalation techniques, less force is used, less people are hurt, there's less long-term damage, both with not only the person, but also the officer. So we want to ensure that that's happening. One of
It's hard to feel for them when the guys got it anywhere else, but what was delivered to the site.
Yeah.
Okay.
Bob's delivered more
Like, how
asphalt,
many
I think.
gallons we got.
That's important.
And nothing has marked.
Hopefully it's to the police cruisers, right?
Let me know if you understand this, man.
We do have some potholes. The other one is requiring a warning before shooting. This is something that you try to do, but again, you can't say, never say never, never say always. There's times when we just don't have the ability to do that. It is something we do want to warn. I mean, we warn somebody before we're going to tase them. We warn them before generally they're going to be handcuffed. We tell people so they know what's going to happen. We require to exhaust all alternatives before using some kind of deadly force. Again, that is our goal, and that's how we train. But anybody that knows about law enforcement is not always an option. The duty to intervene, we've already have in place. The ban shooting at moving vehicles, we already have in place. Comprehensive reporting, we're already doing that. The one that requiring the use of force continuum, and if anybody's ever looked at the 8 Can't Wait or what the force continuum is, back in the day, and we'll refer to that as when I started or when Chief Miranda was probably around his 20th year in career, we had a force continuum, and it had 6 steps. And we started with the first level, which was just us showing up in uniform, and it progressed all the way up through the use of deadly force. About 12 years ago, Oregon changed that and went away from the force continuum and went with a reasonable standard. Well, there's a push to bring the force continuum back. And again, this is being handled at the state level because they're the ones that monitor, certify, and do all of our training. And so there is a state work group that is looking at redefining our force continuum, redefining the force that an officer can use, when it's appropriate, how to apply it, and what the required training is. So those are just kind of the snapshot. And I know I'm going pretty quick, but I think when I talked to Richard O'Hearn, he said, yeah, you've got a few minutes, and I'm not sure what that meant. So, but when we talk about the police department, I could probably keep you guys here all day because I really like it. I like talking about us. But the thing I'll pretty much close with before Chief Miranda decides to, he said he's going to hammer me with questions, is our accreditation. And Newport Police Department is an accredited agency through the Oregon Accreditation Alliance. And we've been accredited since, I should have looked at this one, 2013, I believe, was our first year. We are now, and it is every 3 years we become accredited, and we just had our 3rd award. So we've now done it 3 times. We're working on our 4th one now. And I'll actually read kind of why an agency should be accredited and what the benefit of that is. But the law enforcement accreditation system establishes a uniform set of best practices for police agencies that are consistent on an international scale, measurable, verified by an independent body as to compliance, and creates an accountability to the community, elected policymakers, and the line officers who are performing the day-to-day work. Within the law enforcement standards of best practices are compliance requirements dealing with life, health, safety, and high liability exposures. And so what that means is there's over 100 standards that we not only say we do, but we're able to prove that we do so that we can meet the accreditation standards. That helps with our professionalism, it helps with our accountability, and we don't just say that we're doing something. If somebody asks to prove it, we're able to prove it also. And we do that through actions. And so it was a proud accomplishment for us to be able to achieve under Chief Miranda, and then again being recertified or getting our reaccreditation, and then being able to do that for the 3rd time, even after Chief Miranda left. It was something important enough to our department that not only I wanted to keep it going, but our officers had done a lot of work over the years to be able to say we were doing certain things, and so that the public really helps with a lot of public trust and accountability. And our officers, when Chief left and I had a department meeting with all of our staff, I had asked their opinion. Well, I knew what my answer was. They all agreed and supported the fact that we continue with accreditation. So it makes me feel good that our officers like the accountability, that they want the transparency, and that they're buying off on everything that it is we're selling. So the benefit for that is we have a professional police department, and also with that is because we're human and we make mistakes, we do have accountability measures for that. And accreditation helps that with it. Our policy manual helps out with it. And I think just the overall support of the community helps with it. So kind of really what I have in a nutshell. If anybody has any questions, I'd love to answer them or make up the answer.
I have a question. I'm Ursula Marinelli. I work at the hospital in the foundation office. About body cams, what's the policy at Newport Police regarding body cams on officers?
So we have body cams. We were actually the first agency in the county to have body cams, and we spend a lot of money on them. They're all HD. All of our officers are required to wear them. They're required to activate them. We've defined any law enforcement contact. That had a lot of room for interpretation by our officers. And kind of in light of recent events, as we've changed our policy to ultimately, if they're outside of their car or if they are talking to anybody, is to have their camera. Yes, it costs a lot to have the storage, but you know, it really, the times have changed, and I'm sure that Jeff Buckley can probably also talk to this, and Jeff Ouderkirk can also talk to this, is times have changed when it used to just be an officer's word about what had happened. Having the video evidence, having the video conduct, it's come to a time also where when our officers know they're being watched and know they're being recorded, they generally just act and perform a little better. And I actually had one of the students say, well, it's sad that an officer has to have a camera to conduct themselves a little bit better. I never really thought about it like that. I agree, but it really does help with professionalism, and it really does help paint a picture of what happened. So long answer, yes, we have them. Yes, they're required to wear them. And it's pretty, when an officer's camera goes down, they don't go in the field without one. It's kind of like become the computer in our cars. We get a replacement, we do whatever we can.
Jason, how's your budget?
Budget's terrible. The best way to say that is the city had a little over $1 million structural budget deficit going into the budget process, so we knew we were going to be having some cuts. The COVID-19 crisis added, kind of doubled our crisis, so I think we ended up around $2.4 million short in our overall budget. The police department is one of the largest departments within the city, so we did have, unfortunately, had quite a bit of hit. We had a little over a $600,000 cut in our budget to last year. And what that meant is we lost 3 full-time police officer positions, our parking officer, and half of my assistants. So we lost 4.5 positions with that. When we lose our positions, it's then up to me and our administrative team is how do we deploy our staff to the best needs of the city. And unfortunately, the very tough decision we had to make this year was to cut our school resource officer. Extremely valuable position, pages and pages of just positive what it does for the community and what it does for the schools. And I know John knows this. He was instrumental in helping us get our SRO and the agreement we had with the district. But we had to weigh the balance of the needs of our 10,500 residents and 50,000 visitors over the needs of the school, and it was a really tough position. So there's been a lot of reasons. There's been a lot of discussion on our school resource officer, that we lost it due to budget, that we've lost it due to performance, that we've lost it due to some of the movements. The ultimate truth is it strictly was a budget decision.
Any other questions?
A concern, not really a question, but a concern. And I live east of Newport by John Knight Road, and continually these homeless are walking Highway 20 in camo clothes, and they're walking out in the lane of traffic. And I don't know whose jurisdiction it is or if there's a remedy to it. There's several camps out in that area. And just wondering if Chief Malloy, he has any comment on that.
I can tell you that our homelessness situation in Newport is not unique to Newport. It's prevalent everywhere. The city actually created a city-sponsored homelessness task force that met multiple times over the course of about 2 years, identified some resources, some plans, things to move on. It is now a non-governmental task force that is continuing to meet, but we still have representatives on there. And what we've ultimately determined is we just don't have the resources needed, whether it's drug counseling, mental health counseling, just available affordable housing. You know, there's so many boxes that we're unable to check that we have. And it's a very popular area. You know, we are very familiar, our officers are very familiar with a lot of our homeless clients and people that we deal with. Some of them are there by choice, some are there due to mental health reasons. One of the directions we actually were given at the state level when COVID hit was to stop enforcing the transient camps because there was nowhere else for them to go. And the thought at the state level was it was best at that time to keep them in an area where they were able to be confined or able to social distance, whatever it may be. But again, there's a lot of them. And we know that generally where most of them are, we generally know most of the problems we have. I can tell you not a day goes by we don't have a call related to them. We throw whatever resources we can at them. We try to get voluntary compliance. So really about the best thing that we can do is, and I understand what you're talking about, Bob, is I drive that road also and I see them in camo clothing, or you come around a corner at Norman Road and there's somebody in dark clothes standing on the fog line. Is, you know, we really want our community to be aware that this is happening. We talk to them. Enforcement, you know, it is an option, but again, there's limited we can do besides writing a ticket, and then it's just kind of a perpetual motion where they don't have to appear in court. And if they don't appear in court, there may be some kind of sanctions that just continue. But again, there has to be a need and a want for them to comply. So again, a really long answer, but it's something we're trying. I hate to use this excuse, we just have limited resources.
Well, let me ask you this. Do you talk to these people?
Every day.
You do?
Every day, yep.
Okay. If I gave you 100 reflector vests, could you ask them to wear it when you stop and talk to those people?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay,
You know,
Road Driveway Company will donate 100 of those orange vests to you.
Okay, I think that's a great idea. Again, we can't make them wear them, but I think they want to be safe as anybody else.
Exactly.
They don't want to be hit by a car for whatever the condition. I really appreciate that. And I'll talk to our staff knows just about every one of them by name. They have actually, our officers have a good relationship with them. Every once in a while we get new people in town and it takes a little bit to establish that relationship, but there's almost, I guess, kind of a mutual respect that, you know, they allow us to sit and talk to them, you know, to try to help work through these things. And our exchange is like, we can't keep you from doing this, but maybe if you could go do this at this location, or if you could go do it at that location. So okay, yeah, that's a great tool, and I'll be in touch with you about that.
Thank you very much.
Jason?
Well, good things happen at Rotary meetings. Thanks, Bob. That's a neat idea. I'm sure maybe it'll save a life or two.
Freddie, do we have time for one more question?
Sure.
Jason, it's Doretta Smith. You probably gathered by now I live back behind Fred Meyer by the infamous heater cat. Anyway, we're having an issue with campers camping on the street at the mouth of our subdivision by the Fred Meyer, and there's a couple, 3 houses there, one with little kids. I've called and talked to various people and get different stories on how you're limited on what you can do. Don't really have a full understanding. Any chance you could bring us up to speed of why they're allowed to camp there and cook their dinners on their hoods of their truck day after day?
I can. It's actually a court ruling that came out of Boise, Idaho. There was some homeless that were issued citations for camping on public ground, and it went through the state system, and it ended up, I think, being a Ninth Circuit ruling where it was defined as cruel and unusual punishment if we were issuing people citations for ultimately being homeless. The opinion is much longer than that, and that is the simplified version of it. But we have sent this through our legal team, we have sent this through our insurance carrier, and the guidance that we have is we cannot keep people from public property, but we can keep right-of-ways open. And so if somebody is blocking a sidewalk, then we can ask them to move on. You can't really trespass somebody from public property without cause. And so we have an exclusion ordinance in Newport where if people are drinking in public, or if they are fighting, engaging in tumultuous behavior, committing disorderly conduct, things like that, they can actually be excluded from certain public areas for 30, 60, 90 days, depending on the instance. So the people where you're seeing a lot of people camping on City Hall lawns right now, near the bus shelter, kind of in the right-of-way area next to sidewalks, they're no longer on the sidewalks because they've been told they can't be there. But if they move that 2 feet into the bark dust area that's considered the right-of-way, not private property, we have zero authority to ask them to move on. Now we can talk to them, we can plead with them, and we can maybe suggest another place for them to go that is less intrusive. But as far as forcefulness of us being able to enforce or move them on, is ultimately our hands have been tied by recent court rulings. And there was
do they have to prove to you that they're homeless?
No, they do not. And because Newport does not have a homeless shelter, so if Newport had a homeless shelter, we can then enforce it if there is a place for them to go. If we had a designated, say, Dignity Village, which was a designated homeless camp, then we can use enforcement because there is a dedicated place for them to go. But the courts have ruled that because somebody doesn't have resources, doesn't have a house, doesn't have a place to go, enforcement is a violation of their 8th Amendment.
And I get that, but it's pretty apparent we're getting people camping who probably do have a home, and they're just not wanting to pay the campground fees. And the word on the street is you can basically park wherever and camp for the night. And so it seems to me you should have to prove that you're homeless.
Not that we've seen. One of the things that we've run into here over since about July is our campgrounds are full and our motels are full, and we're running into, we'll see a dozen motorhomes scattered across 101 or Highway 20. The milepost 2 on Highway 20, the large turnout out there, I think had 7 motorhomes in it the other day. And I know that our officers talked to ones in north of town who said we have nowhere else to be. You know, there is nowhere to go. The state parks, you have to have reservations now, and then our local campgrounds have been full. So it's not making excuses, but again, it's tough when there's been really limited resources and so many people in town.
One of the things that I'm bothered by, I live by Doretta with the crazy cat, but on that street in front of Fred Meyer, because there's only a sidewalk that goes up to the second entrance at Fred Meyer, and there isn't a sidewalk coming west down the hill. When they park there, especially for children, and we have a very large population of kids in that neighborhood, as they walk down, it's impossible to see them because the motorhomes and the trucks and things shield them from view from oncoming traffic going up and down the hill. So it can get kind of dangerous. It can be dangerous for kids on bikes or adults on bikes. It can also be pretty dangerous as far as just little kids. You can't see them because they're hidden with that. So maybe it's something we could talk to the city about extending our sidewalks up both sides of that street. It would narrow the street a little bit, but it's a visual problem as well for pedestrians.
And I'll make sure our patrol officers know 20th Street's a frequently patrolled area. So, but we'll also just make sure we're paying a little extra attention, that if there's something we can do, we will. Again, the city is working on a car camping ordinance, which authorizes and allows car camping, but only in designated areas. And we're hoping that then when we find motorhomes, cars, whatever it may be in random areas of the city, is we can then direct them to a dedicated area that has facilities and services. So
are they allowed to have open cooking like that? Because the guy that was cooking out on the hood of his truck was right below the pine trees of the house that's there, and we're awfully dry right now. It's August, and I just don't understand why open flames are being allowed.
It actually came up not too long ago, and I talked to our fire chief about that. And if they're while we're in fire season and open fire pits are not allowed, open flame cooking is. And again, I don't understand all the state rules, but again, it's something we can keep an eye on. And if there's something we can help with, we will. But again, people have rights, and our job to support them.
So I have a question. We still have 6 minutes. So Jason, you mentioned the importance of community input. So does the Newport Police Department have a citizen advisory group linked to the police department, or has there been talks or thoughts about that?
Thanks for bringing that up, Julie. There's a lot of talk and a lot of discussion. It was actually a council goal. It was something I know that Chief Miranda and I tried for quite a few years, and it's something we have to have city support of. And year before last, our city council, one of their goals was to establish a police advisory council or a police advisory group. And I was super excited about that. The minute I came back from the meeting, I wrote a draft, and I'm working with 2 of the counselors right now. And we have a department head for a city council work session scheduled for the first meeting in October to take the next steps to actually establishing a citizens advisory council. And it's going to be made up of citizens from Newport. I believe it actually goes into the urban growth areas, but it's our underrepresented community, our youth community, and just members of our community. We're trying to get a very diverse section so that everybody has input. So I'm really hoping.
Would people apply for that like they do for other city?
Yes. Well, I can tell you the draft that I wrote had an application process and a selection process. It's ultimately up to our council because it is a group that reports directly to our city council. But there will be some kind of selection process. There will be, I think, like most advisory councils, they're appointed by the mayor. So I'm excited for it. I'm really eager for it, and I'm hoping that this fall we're going to have substantial steps of moving forward.
I'm glad you're doing that. I think that's a step in the right direction. And I just wanted to say, Robbie, real quick before we go, Robbie Wiener, you do not have to pay 20 to my Paul Harris. Save it and use it on the vests that your dad's doing.
I have a quick comment, real quick. Jason, I just want you to know that I think Officer Tom Lekas, who is the SRO, is by far the best one that I've seen in the 13 years that my kids have been in school, because he absolutely related to every kid. He would sign up for, like when we had a pie fundraiser, he signed up, volunteered to have himself pied in front of the school, like thrown a pie to the face. And he's a soccer coach. He will be missed in the schools if we ever open. But I just want to say that if we do get that back, please put him in there. He's awesome. So.
I think many would agree with you.
All right. Well, thanks, Chief Malloy. It was great having you with us today, and thanks for working so hard to keep our town safe. I think you're doing a great job with that. So as a thank you for presenting today, we're going to vaccinate 50 kids against polio in your name, which is a project Rotary's been working on for quite a while and getting pretty close to completing. So thank you.
Thank you. And Bob, I will get in touch with you about those vests soon.
All right, with about 3 minutes, Keith, do you have attendance and makeups?
Yes, I do. I have today 34 members, so we did about 50% for our membership attendance. I did the membership incentive, and it's $5, and it went to Karen Gray, so it'll be $10 next week, I guess. And the 50-50, we had $75, so the pot is $37.50. And Ursula, the last time I did this, didn't you win? I think the number came up for Ursula to do it again this time, so it's $37.50 to Ursula.
No, I did not win last time, but thanks. Go ahead and put that towards my Paul Harris. Thank you. And I also say that Robbie did kick in another $80, so I guess maybe that 100 is going to go towards the vests.
All right, thanks, Keith. And how about our social media word?
Yeah, Freddie, once a year I take a break from social media, so I didn't post anything this week. So anyway, no winners or losers.
All right. Thanks, John. Next week, we have another good program. It's County Operations in a COVID Environment. Doug Hunt is going to talk to us about that next week. So be sure to come back next Thursday. And let's see, I guess we need to finish up with the 4-way test. Any volunteers for that? Marcia.
I can take us out with that 4-way test, but let's see how good my memory is, all right? Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Is it beneficial to all concerned? And is it fun?
All right, thanks, Marcia. Well, great to see everybody. Another good turnout this week, and hope to see you all back next Thursday. Should be a great program, just like today was. So see you everybody.